All right, so once you have your drawing all laid out nicely the way you want it with pencil, shouldn't be too dark. Some of this is a little dark because I was using it to show you what to do, but you're going to ink it with a Sharpie, and you're going to use this kind of Sharpie. So it's the ultra fine point. If you don't have that, you could use the fine point. It's a little bit thicker, but if you do, you want to make sure that you just keep it straight up and down so that it doesn't make a fat line. So you want to keep it with a skinny line. But I like to use this because it just gets just enough where you can create lines to fill in. So if you have a lot of really straight lines, you can use a ruler. But the thing is if you can see this on one end of the ruler, it's got a curve to it. So it curves like this. So if you put it upside down, it makes it so that it lifts away from the paper. But if you put it on the flat side where it's right up to the edge flat, it's gonna make the ink bleed underneath. So you have to be really careful about that. You could also put something like a card or something underneath it to lift it, but it should be not touching the paper. So this, you can kind of see the shadow that this is making because it is lifted off the paper because I have it upside down. But it just depends on the ruler that you have. You have to take a look at it. So what I'm going to do is, if I want to make a straight line, then I'm going to very carefully hold this down. And I'm going to that's where my little vine is. So I'm going to go. Now, one important thing to do is always go past the edge of where you drew your border. See that border line right here? Every line that you make that goes to the edge of the paper, I want you to overshoot it past the edge of the line so that when you crop it off, it will cut it off and you know that there's no open edges. Okay, so you don't have to use a ruler, okay, but if some of you used a ruler to draw some of your pencil lines, so you can use a ruler. But again, I'm going off the edge of the paper. So as long as you make it go off the edge, you're good. Now, like this, I have these little circles here. I can go ahead and, so notice that I'm rotating my page around to make sure that I'm not putting my arm across the ink that I just did. Okay, and so it's not that easy to do curves, but if you kind of let your hand rest on the paper, and then that lets it have more control. So I had my hand resting on the paper, and that let me kind of use my hand as a pivot. It's not perfect, but it's going to be fine. So you want to just make sure that you're always kind of drawing away from wherever you just drew so that you don't get your hand over some wet ink. This is probably dry enough now. So I'm going to go and just make these little, a very, very important thing to do besides going off the edge of the paper is also that every line has to touch another line. So like right here, I'm going to take and make a line, and it needs to go all the way to touch this line, right? And these are just some kind of random rays that I made, and they're all at different distances. And don't hold your pen down to the paper for too long, or it'll make like a blurby dot. So you're just going to go over every pencil line that you have. Now some of you made some really, now notice how I'm kind of turning this as I go. I'm just making sure that I'm not touching the ink. So I'm keeping my hand away from wherever I just drew, and I am not touching the ink. So everything on here needs to be a closed shape. So I am just tracing all of my lines and touching to the edge. Make sure that all, see how they all connect? Don't leave any open lines, like don't stop your pen there. You have to make sure that it goes all the way to the edge of a line. And that's pretty much what you're going to do for the whole thing. So after you're completely done putting the ink on from the pens, then you'll erase it. But make sure that you wait about an hour before you start erasing. So go ahead and spend your time. When you're done with your 2 pencil drawings, then you're going to go in and you're going to ink up your piece. And when you're done, you're going to erase. See, I have some messy pencil lines here. You can kind of see they're underneath there, but it's okay. I didn't finish this part. But because I drew it so lightly, I'm just going to go in and erase. You can leave this edge on if you have any of that on, but you want to, because that'll show you where you're going to crop it. But other than that, make sure that you get everything off the edge. Every line touches the line and everything's a shape. So here, oh, I wanted to show you this too. So I drew some stars, and I know some of you like to draw stars where you do the little trick where you crisscross it over. But I don't want those crisscrosses in my stars, so you don't have to draw that part. Once I have it done, now I can just trace my star. Because now I have a pattern to trace, okay? And if you have any small dots, go around kind of the outside edge, because you don't want any dots. See how that kind of blobs up? You don't want any dots any smaller than that, because there's nothing to fill. Okay, so I have a few small ones, and I'm just going to quickly go around the outside edges. So again, your stars, you can just go around the outside edge and then erase that little crisscross part that goes around the outside. All right, so that's it for the inking, and I'm going to post this so that you can watch it later if you want to. That's it.